Okay, everybody.
We're
Thank
going to
you so
start so people
much.
just rejoin us.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the boring stuff while people rejoin. Just a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name is Tanya Quintieri. That's an Italian last name, but I have no Italian affiliation. That is from my ex-husband. I am a German American, born in Stuttgart on US soil, I guess. I'm a military brat, for those of you who know what that is. Um, and my session today, I honestly tried to put together a presentation because I thought it's a conference. We need to have a presentation, right? But after 2.5 hours, I gave up and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to present for 30 minutes. I'm going to have 10 minutes Q&A. I can't be working half a day on a presentation. It was not coming to me because, truth be told, this is a storytelling session. And I hope that you will take away from this session inspiration for your own journey in this new work that is the motto of this conference. So what's going to be happening, just so you know, if you want to stay here or if you want to go and make dinner, whatever, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey, how I became an entrepreneur, the different stages of how I adapted to a so-called changing market. And then I'll share with you some examples. And then I would totally love if you guys jump on this call with me and share your stories, your questions. And hopefully we'll end the day sometime later tonight with many new ideas, with courage to follow your passions. And yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. I would argue that I've all my life been an early adopter, and very early on I had a very entrepreneurial mindset. Now, why do I say this? At the age of 5, we celebrated Sunday lunches with my grandmother, and most of the family was there, including an elderly uncle. He hardly had any more hair on his head. He was a lifetime single, and so family was very important to him. And um, one Sunday, he asked me if I would like to comb his head with this turtle. I'm not sure what it's called, but he had a comb back then. I'm old, so back then he had a comb that was made of turtle shell, and so I sat on the backrest of my grandmother's couch, and he was sitting in front of me, and I would comb his hair for probably half an hour, and my pay was 10 pfennig back then. Obviously, we didn't have euros, right? And so every Sunday, I earned my 10 pfennig that I got to spend at the bakery the next morning for sweets. 2 years in, my cousins were old enough to actually take on some hair combing shifts. And I argued with him that my pay would have to increase because I am more experienced. So at 7 years old, I had my first negotiation about an increase in my rate. And I didn't just raise it by 10% or by 100%, I raised it by 500%. And so as I went into elementary school, my pocket money that I had earned myself was 50 pfennig each week. Then sometime between then and my 12th birthday, we moved back to the United States, and I had taken calligraphy classes. And I was so good at calligraphy that my teacher suggested me to the Monterey. There's a museum in Monterey, California, and they needed somebody to calligraphy their tags for the art pieces. So I negotiated $5 per tag, and I would spend my afternoons and evenings writing in ink with a calligraphy pen, the name of the artwork, the author, and the price. No, there was no prices at that point. At 13, I diversified. I took a course in infant and toddler CPD, and I added babysitting to my portfolio, which kept me busy probably about 5 nights per week. And so by the time I was 16, I was already earning a fair amount of pocket money, right? Then when I turned 16, I decided that I no longer wanted to live at home. and I moved from California to Karlsruhe in Germany. And I had my first apartment, but obviously I needed to go to school to get my school leaving diploma. And but because I was so used to having my own money, I worked for a supermarket, cleaning it after hours on 6 days a week. Luckily in Germany, retail is still closed on Sundays. Even today, I'm sorry, there's a fungus gnat. I have many plants. So 6 days a week in the evening after the store closed, I would go there and I would clean the aisles, the floors, and that's how I made my money. Then now fortunate, then unfortunate reasons, I had my first child. I will never call him an accident. He was a blessing. So at the age of 17, I had just started my apprenticeship, and I learned that I was pregnant. And at the time, I thought I could not have children. So when my doctor told me that I was pregnant, to me, that was a sign of God that I had to have this child. And shortly after, his brother came along 2 years later. So by the time I turned 19, I had 2 small boys. And of course, I wanted to give them the best start in life. So even though they were still very small, I always worked part-time. During that time, a lot in retail. And by the age of 20, I had taken on a store manager position in a bakery chain. But that wasn't enough. I still felt that there was more. What I had developed in California was this passion for gastronomy. So on Sundays, I would spend a couple of hours at an ice cream parlor that a friend of mine owned, and I worked there. And as time went on, I thought to myself, I want to have my own place, right? I want to have my own gastronomy. I want to be the boss who welcomes patrons. So, but already back then, I was a little bit out of the norm. So when I was 23, I opened up my own cafe, which served the best artisanal ice cream that I bought. So basically, I outsourced that part. I outsourced the Flammkuchen, which is a specialty from the Alsace. And I also had a partnership with a company called Debitel, who do mobile phone contracts and mobile phones. But even yet, I wanted it to be more niche and more special. So I focused my efforts on senior users of mobile devices, which back then was quite new. And so I had this one glass case in my cafe where I had mobile phones on display, the glorious days of the Nokias. And on Sunday afternoons from 3 to 5 o'clock, I would have classes for seniors to teach them how to add contacts on their phone, how to write SMS, things like that. It was crazy. Anyway, because I was 23, because I had no idea what I was doing, I had no training, that business failed after a year, simply for the reason that I was totally overworked. I did not know how to delegate. Like, I would clean the place, I would do the shopping, I would do, I would develop the menus, etc. So that was kind of crazy, but it was a lesson that I learned. And when I decided to close the place, I also decided that my failure was due to a lack of knowledge. So I said, okay, I'm going to go back to school. And I went into an apprenticeship with an engineering company. And the problem was, up until that point, I was already making a decent amount of money, right? Success is not always monetary. So I was lacking income because when you're in school, you're not really making any money. So I was doing like 3 jobs on the side. On Friday and Saturday, I would do security at the local soccer club. During the week, I worked in restaurants, and I also started my own first business back in 2002. Second business, but first business that led to what I am today, which back then I called Rent a Secretary. Nobody had ever heard of virtual assistants, right? So I advertised my services to local craftsmen, like electricians and plumbers, and they would fax me their handwritten proposals and invoices, and I would put them into a computer and make it look nice and send it out and track payments, etc. At the same time, I read an ad of a local IT company who was looking, or who are looking for a German English translator. I had no idea about IT. I had no idea about translation, much less did I know that being a translator was an actual profession, nor that it needed special training. But I applied and they loved my work. So that was my very first client in translation back in 2002. Where am I on my very long list? Right. So back then, 2002, Rent a Secretary. Meanwhile, by 2006, I had finished my apprenticeship and I was a project assistant slash marketing manager slash HR manager, and I worked for IT companies, probably because that first translation client really sparked an interest in IT in me, mainly because the CEO back then and until today is very invested in the humane usage of IT systems in general. And that totally appealed to me. I loved their message and their processes. They were very much about processes. In fact, that's one of their core products is improving processes within organizations. So that spoke to me a lot. And I naturally gravitated towards IT companies then. And I went into full-time employment with an IT company. On the side, I was still running my business, the Rent a Secretary. I had a couple of translation clients. I had a couple of clients for whom I did office services of all kinds, you know, vetting applicants for jobs that they had put out there, doing their invoicing, stuff like that. Then in 2009, long story short, we only have so much time today, but for various reasons, I decided to leave the IT company. And I had just built a house. We had literally just moved in August. And in October, I was faced with the decision, would I find a different company to work for, or would I take my business freelance? Now, thanks to the marketing and HR activities that I had done or performed for my employer, my address book was packed. I had an awesome network of decision makers. So I thought to myself, if not now, I will never again have the chance to, like, at the peak of my, I'll call it popularity with so many important people, have the chance to have my own company take off. So I quit my job and I sent out an email to all my contacts and said, hey, listen, I left so-and-so company and I am focusing on translation, primarily IT and marketing. So if you have anything for me, hit me up. And the response was crazy. I wasn't even done with the paperwork for, you know, filing my business as full-time, and my books were already full for months. And I hired 2 translators. I hired a secretary. I hired a woman who did the office services on our behalf. And it had me dizzy, right? We were getting projects left and right. And it was moving so fast that it totally overwhelmed me. And we did that for 3 years. And then my secretary decided she would go freelance with something totally different in the holistic therapy area. My office service worker, she was offered a job with another country in Belgium, and she had wanted to leave Germany. My translators decided they wanted to go freelance. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to have to reinvent myself. And I had met this designer who had studied at the Bauhaus University in Weimar, I think it was, Leipzig, Weimar, I don't know. And he was based in Berlin, and at the time I already had a second office in Berlin. And we said, why don't we work together and complement our services? And this was 2012, and for today's business, that was a totally important point in time. He actually got me into the holistic approach to corporate communications. He was a very visual person. I was a very wordy person. And together we did projects that were just, that I would have never been able to do on my own. And I learned so much from him. It was amazing. It was like, we did this for 3 years, and then he got offered a position with an international company, and he decided to go for that. But up until then, we had amazing projects in real estate and in tech, in digitization. We had governmental projects that were contracted through the government. It was amazing, and I learned so incredibly much. And I thought, that is my thing. I love translation, I love languages, but there's this aspect that goes beyond words that has always been intriguing to me. I love the human connection. I love communicating beyond words. So that was like totally my thing. And then he left our mutual company. And at the same time, I got pregnant again with my beautiful daughter, Zara. And so again, I had to reinvent myself. And so out of that company, which was then called Patchwork Labs, design agency for corporate communications, I was left with my part, the translation part. So I started a new brand called the Translators. And this was in, let me check, the Translators was 2015. But I was also left with all our web design clients. We, up until that point, within those 3 years, we had built so many websites and we were hosting them. And I was really, really enjoying that part, because taking your creativity from words to pixels was like my calling. So I decided to keep those, but I didn't know how to incorporate that with the translation. So I made that into a separate company, and I thought to myself, okay, because I founded an association for translators, because I'd been speaking at so many international conferences, etc. My network among translators was huge, and back then I was known for a series called The Outsourcing Translators, which was a series of articles that I had published, I think back then on the open mic. So that part I kept as WordPress for translators. But then after my daughter was born, I found it really time consuming and hard to keep like those two identities on a consistent level of quality. And I thought to myself, in a perfect world, I would combine those things, right? Because now I was a web designer and hoster, and I was a translator, and I'm known as this networker who has a problem solver for every issue people might face, no matter where they come from, be it from my colleagues or my clients. And so I rebranded as Miss Divi, and I brought it all together under one umbrella, where I offer translation, copywriting, transcreation, and web design. And I've managed over the past 3 years, now going into my 4th year, to keep my position in the translator sphere as a mentor. I was awarded Mentor of the Year by the prose community in 2017. But also in my web design community, where I've spoken at various events, and they know me as the person to go to for internet or multilingual websites. And then again, last year, because of my experience with associations and because of my connections in the web development and web design sphere, I teamed up with a PHP developer and developed a new product called WP Associations, which is like an out-of-the-box product for associations. And of course, our first clients are translation associations. And then this year, out of all I don't want to call it fame because that's crazy, but I have a reputation of being a mentor, and I've been coaching fellow freelancers, not just translators, but fellow freelancers for many years now, even though I don't advertise it. But this year, I want to take that to the next level. So this year, I'm adding them coaching to my tool belt, basically. And it's a really fine line you walk between being a jack of all trades and being someone who follows their passions and allocates sufficient time to each of your projects, even if you're wearing totally different hats while working on those projects. The essence of the story that I'm telling you is that just a moment ago, I was the product of the vision, of the past visions I had for myself, obviously in the past. And now I took a breath, and again, I am a product of my visions of the past. And again, it's like time is my friend, because with every second that passes, I get to be the entrepreneur, the translator, the web designer, the consultant that I want to be. And the point that I want to make is that even with this pandemic that has thrown all of us into new waters, right? We need to realize that markets are always changing. Markets are always subject to external factors that we cannot control, but we can decide that instead of having the market forcing us to change, we can go with whatever rocks our boat to be that change. You don't have to wait for the market to change your business model. And there is no shame in saying, I want to be more than just a translator, even though I really highly respect people, who translate 8, 10, 12 hours a day. That is totally fine. If that is what makes you happy, that's the bottom line we need to strive for, that at the end of the day, we kick back, we have our dinner, we look back on the day, and we're happy about what we did. And that's going to be different things for different people. But if whatever it is that you're looking back on tonight and it doesn't make you truly happy, pandemic or not, financial crises or not, economical crisis or not, you are the person who needs to make those changes. And the reason why I shared my story with you was just to show you that you don't have to stick with just one set of services that you offer. You can take in your passions, your ideas, even if ideas are crazy, and I'm going to share a couple of ideas with you soon as I'm done with my sermon. There is happiness in running a business. And when you're happy, you become successful. And when you're successful, you become even happier. And obviously, success is different for all of us. But for me, it's always been about not just dreaming of where I want to be next week, next month, next year, in 5 years. To me, it was always about having a vision and putting that vision to life. And if it doesn't work out, there's no shame in failing. I've failed before, and I only came out stronger. So I guess what my own business journey has always been about was to attract the right clients at the right time to meet whatever need it was that I needed to make myself happy. I'll give you a couple of very concrete examples that nobody can argue with me. When I unexpectedly became pregnant with my third child, I immediately fell in love because I knew biologically this was my last chance to put life into this world. And out of nowhere, a client popped up, a direct client, who offers a franchise program for photographers for baby photography, neonatal photography, newborn photography, pregnancy photography. And they had this big website, where you could order a photographer or book a photographer and then order products like, I don't know, pillows, onesies, posters, whatever. And I thought, that's crazy. You know, I've never worked for any company that did anything like that. But now here I am, pregnant, overjoyed, and I get to work on this project. In late 2018, we were looking for a house, and we found a house that was under construction. And one of the last things was to choose the tiles and the sanitary ware and the furniture. And lo and behold, exactly during that time, I got a new client, a Turkish manufacturer of sanitary ware. Right now, because we love to travel, my daughter is going to be 5 in May, and she's been all over the Americas. She's been all over Europe. We're travelers by heart. We love to travel. And obviously now with the lockdowns and everything, right now the Czech Republic is in a super bad place. As of COVID, we're in a very strict lockdown. And I'm kind of, you know, I'm longing for traveling. And even my daughter is saying, Mommy, I want to go to the hotel and you know, pick my food from the breakfast buffet. 2 weeks ago, a contact of mine said, hey, Tanya, I have this client. She needs to have a landing page designed for her bed and breakfast. Do you have the time to do that? And I talked to this lady. Turns out she's a German countess, and she owns this huge estate. And she basically needs somebody to run her complete marketing. And so it's really the energy you put out there that I think determines the change that you can make within your own sphere. And now I would like to share a couple of examples with you, aside from my own, because as you've figured out by now, my diversification and answer to changes in the market is having added web design and hosting and branding to my portfolio, as well as new this year coaching. There's a couple of concrete examples I'd like to share with you. For one, we have Claire. Claire was a translator, and she turned into a writer for children's books that focus on sustainability and saving the planet and teaching children how they can do their part to make this a better world. We have Andrew, a translator who became outsourcer and now a writer. He's incredibly successful with his writing business, but obviously he still serves his translation clients. We have Susan, who is a translator slash outsourcer, who has been training for the last couple of years to become a relationship coach. And so she's right now working on her practice where she can offer therapy for couples and singles, you know, who have problems with relationships and building those. Then there's my friend Roberta. Her diversification is more of a horizontal thing. She works 20 hours as an in-house translator with a tech company in Germany, and the other 20 hours she spends on her freelance career, also as a translator, but also teaching Italian. Then we have Zoe, who's a translator most of the time, but during the past 2-3 years, she's been working on building a artisanal soap business, or as she calls it, a cottage industry soap shop. Just because that is one of her passions, making soaps, right? People do it for a hobby, but she turned it into a business, and that is something totally different from her translation business. Bottom line is, if you're looking to diversify in this new age, you know, where we face things like the pandemic, like lockdowns, our industry is completely changing. I mean, I can't even imagine the panic that those of you have who work in the hospitality industry, you know, how that's been for you. But I really, truly do hope that your clients have found ways to work around that, not just to secure your income as a translator for their products, but also for their own businesses, obviously. And what I want to ask you is that however you develop your business from today on, from next week on, from next month on, is that you look beyond project and numbers, and that you forge human connections. Because when you put your passions out there and your true interests, you know, the things that make your heart beat faster, it's totally okay not to be a translator 40 hours a week. You know, there's room for more. And anything that you have more obviously gives you more chances to diversify your income. And so with that, I'm done. And I'm ready for you guys to join me here on stage and ask, share, whatever. No? Oh, come on.
Yeah, I
Done
just
it.
wanted to ask if you ever sleep.
I do. Actually, you know, the thing is, having a diversified portfolio allows me to choose from a lot more projects, obviously, as compared to if I would only focus on translation jobs. So I have projects coming in from various angles, and to be honest, I probably, on average, don't work more than 5-6 hours a day.
I was actually going to ask, considering your life story, whether you ever panic.
No, I don't. I have this, I was raised Catholic. Now I identify as agnostic, but I have this unshakable belief in energy. Like, you know, there's something out there. I don't know what it's called. Is it God? Is it the universe? Is it fate? Whatever. But I very much trust that something out there provides for us if we are very honest with our needs and our beliefs. And you know, you have to put the right questions and the right requests out there in order to make it work. A perfectly good example. My older son, he's now going to be 27. He lived at home with his dad. We're divorced. He lived at home with his dad ever since I moved out in 2016, and he did a traineeship. And of course, his dad wanted to support him, so he let him live with him at no cost, whatever. But after 27 years, you know, a man wants to live his own life. So he was like, okay, Nino, you're going to have to find your own place. And my son came to me and he asked, Mom, you know, I'm done with my training now in April, but I still don't have a job for afterward. If I were to go and get an apartment now, would you be willing to support me with the rent? And I said, yes, of course. And I honestly, I put it out to the universe and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to have to support my son a little bit longer. I need to have the income to do that. And along came the Countess. You know, she's now on a retainer with me for several €100 a month. And that's, you know, part of that is going towards my son. So I really do believe if you put it out there, if you don't dwell on no's, because I realized, or let's put it this way, I was on the buying side for many years. So I know that a no to one of my offers is nothing against me personally. It's just a no to the circumstances and to the offer that I have on hand, but it's never a no to me. And so then I just move on. So there's nothing really to panic about because it's never personal. Like, yeah, when opportunities don't materialize, I simply trust that that is only to make room for something better. And it's been like that for 19 years. You know, I've been doing this for 19 years and it's always been like that. So I don't tend to panic.
By the way, Israel is a very entrepreneurial society, and especially in the past year with COVID-19, you see a lot of stories in the media about people reinventing themselves and people who seize the opportunity to stop doing a job they hated and to start doing something that they love. So there's actually quite a lot of businesses have closed down, but a lot of new businesses have also opened.
Yeah, I agree. I have many friends Sadly, not so many in the translation sphere, but in the web design sphere, it's crazy. The last really big conference I went to, and we're talking 4,000 participants, was in the web development community in Berlin last year, 2019. And the number of friends I made there, like really close friends that I'm so grateful for, probably like 50% of them are actually from Israel. And it's amazing what's coming out of Israel. I was totally in awe to see the spirit, and even now through the pandemic, you know, they've been pushing on developing their products, developing their client base in ways that other people I know, you know, would feel lucky doing outside of a pandemic. So I'm in awe.
Because so many businesses now need to go online.
That's right. That's right. So my question to you guys, does anybody do anything else besides translating?
Oh, yes, I do quite a bit. I think I've never done translation full time. I've stuck to my old life as a software developer and
Okay.
consultant. I used to do that full time until about 20 years ago. And then I started moving into translation.
Okay.
I'm still learning new skills in that field.
Oh, definitely. Me too. I don't have a proper education as a translator. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't even know that it was a real profession. And the first time I ever set foot in a university was when I spoke to translators in the making back in 2012 to talk to them about freelancing as a translator. That was crazy, but yeah.
Actually, at some point I studied translations for not a degree, a diploma. It's a bit of shorter studies. And way back in the 90s, I studied applied math, which was all ancient history for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I actually never worked as a translator full time. I've always combined several fields. I'm a photographer, graphic designer, now jewelry designer. And I mean, I really love my work and I mostly do only what I love, and that's a blessing. And I have a question for you. Could you recommend how to showcase all those different fields on one page or whatever?
Okay, yeah, so I found that really hard because obviously my clients in translation are different from my clients in web design, right? So what helped me when I created the Miss Divi brand was that I only focused on core activities, you know, like translation, copywriting, hosting, and web design. And then everything else is just reputation management. I'm very active. You know, I'm a moderator on Clubhouse. I do weekly lives on Facebook. I'm more or less active on LinkedIn. I'm really connected well with my clients. Like whenever I have a new project, it is always word of mouth. At least that's what I've found for myself. You know, is if you have a service, or actually it's twofold. When I work for my clients, no matter in what domain, I am passionate, right? I want them to succeed because their success is my success. And that is actually my slogan. My invoices say, thank you for making your business my business because your success is my success. And I also make sure that I go beyond the scope of the project in our communications. So for instance, today, an agency sent back a translation with feedback from the client, and she asked me to come back to her by the end of the day. And I said, you know what, I'll try to get back to you by the end of the day, but I can't promise that because I'm going to be speaking at the Israel Translators Association conference later today, and I'm preparing for that right now. You know, whereas somebody else might have said, no, I can't, right? So sharing bits and pieces of my everyday life helps me to spread the word of what I do, what I'm passionate about, to clients of all kinds. Like I have a client, he's a wine tester. who regularly does like 120 wines on a weekend, and he writes blog posts about that and writes catalogs, and I translate that for him. And whenever he runs into somebody who he thinks might be a good fit, he's the first one to say, hey, I know this girl named Tanya, maybe she can help you with that, you know? And so I have people approaching me with different projects. And because I have such a big network, I never have to turn them down. Even if I can't do it, I know I have somebody in my network who can, right? So that's obviously not something that you develop overnight. It's something that you forge over many years. But then again, you know, success that comes easy is never success that lasts.
Thinking that, I was wondering whether Miriam should have one website for all of her endeavors, or whether she should have, I'm thinking, for instance, if I was looking for a photographer, would I would I want to take somebody who's also a jewelry designer and also a translator? I think that in the creative fields, as in the photography and the jewelry design, I would probably put them together. And I'm wondering whether the translation should have a separate website. You have to sort of think about it, I think, from the eyes of the prospective client. What would the client, if you were looking for this service, I mean, would you take a translator who's also a graphic designer and a jewelry designer? Not necessarily. But if you're looking for a jewelry designer and that jewelry designer is also a graphic designer and photographer, so you think, okay, this is a particularly creative person. Right. So maybe you should have two websites, you know, one for your creative side and one for your sort of more.
I have that a lot with my translator clients that I do web design for. And usually I do suggest that they put everything on one website, but that they're vague enough about it to open up space for, you know, a user comes to your website with a problem in mind. And what they want to know is, can this person offer a solution? Be that graphic design, be that translation, whatever.
However, you get today so many websites that say that they offer solutions that you have no idea what the company does. I know, for instance, from our work, sometimes we're doing work that concerns a certain company, and I'll go to the website of that company to see what they do to get the keywords of their products so that I can translate them and hopefully get the translation from their website, especially if it's multilingual, and all you find is that they provide solutions. And you're thinking, what do they do? You know, everybody's just providing solutions.
That sounds a lot like IT, and that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point that I'm trying to make is, for instance, let's take my wine testing friend, right? Maybe he will go to a chalet that needs to have their website translated into English. And he will say, hey, I know this girl, she translates for me. Her name is Tanya Quintieri. You can find her at Miss Divi. Said chalet will come to my website and they will see, okay, she offers translation, she offers copywriting, she offers hosting, and she offers web design. Now, the thing that would probably stand out for them is hosting, but as they will see when they go to that page, the reason I do that is because I believe in sustainable websites. There is such a thing as environmentally unfriendly and friendly websites. So I take matters into my own hands. But as for everything else, and I see a cat right there at Dina's screen. I love cats. You know, they will see, okay, wait, she does copywriting, you know. So in where did you go? Miriam's case, if she does a creative translation for somebody who does jewelry, who then might recommend her to somebody who manufactures jewelry boxes, or I don't know, maybe a florist or somebody, you know, because if you put a ring on the finger, then you're probably going to show up with roses. So you need to think about those things. And I agree with you. If you are too vague on your website and somebody doesn't instantly see what you do, I agree that is really, really bad web design. But you know, for me, that is a mission to combat that and to showcase my clients' skills and services in a way that's coherent to their target audience, right?
By the way, what's a sustainable or environmentally friendly website?
Okay, so for one, you want to make sure that the servers that serve the files of your website, the PHP files and the CSS files, and where all your data is stored that makes up your website, that those servers are run on renewable energies. And then you also want to have it designed in a way that allows your website to be pulled up quickly, meaning you don't have weird functions on there like carousels and sliders and stuff like that that just take up resources. The battery of the device that is pulling up the website, the time that it takes to pull up your website. So your website wants to be optimized for speed, but then again, your website also wants to have great copy that makes using your website fast and efficient. So yeah, there's a standard in the web design or web development community. The fastest website, the most sustainable website ever, by the way, is that of Elon Musk. It's just one HTML page with 4 lines of text, I think. But it's the most sustainable website ever. I'd have to see if I can find the link, but I think it's elonmusk.com. And it basically has all the information you need, but of course, Elon Musk has a reputation, so.
Okay, I think that's just about all the time we have.
Oh my goodness, time
so that's over. Yeah, okay, first, thank you. It was very, very educational. It's great to hear your story.
Thank you. And if any of you want to connect, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, I did leave a comment with my link, so thank you so much for your attention and all the best to you.
Welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Tanya, you sent the comment with the link to me, not to everyone.
Really?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna redo that. Thank you so much. But generally, if you look for Miss Divi, mrs.divi, you will find me. Thank you so much.